This is a story of my first major offline tournament victory. In 2012, over a decade ago, I attended DreamHack Summer in Sweden, Jonkoping, and I won the entire thing. This is how I did it. It all started with day 1 of the tournament, where 128 players got put into the groups of 4, with 2 players advancing and 2 players being knocked out. I got placed into group 22 together with LiveZerg and 2 other unknown Swedish players. I was quite confident to advance to the next stage of the tournament, but I still lost my match versus LiveZerg, which was the underdog in the match, and I remember being quite upset at the loss because I was quite ahead in those games versus him, and he still managed to win those games with the power of Infestor, which was quite imbalanced at that time. I advanced forward to the next stage of the tournament with the score 2-1 and got put into group stage number 2. In that phase, I got placed into the group with Protosur, Merz and QXC. Fun fact, Protosur is the older brother of Cyril that you know currently, is one of the best players, if not the best player in the world. And in this group stage, some magic had to happen for me to advance to the next stage of the tournament. I remember losing my first match versus QXC and Protosur, so that put me in 0 wins and 2 losses into the group, and I was an overwhelming favorite versus QXC. I just couldn't believe I lost that match, and I was also very good in Protoss versus Terran. The loss to Protosur was also very upsetting because I remember he was a great abuser of Broodlord Infestor, and it was just an overwhelming feeling of loss and helplessness versus him. So I played my last match without a care in the world. I won versus Merz 2-1, and I thought with a score of 1 win and 2 losses, I have no chance of advancing to the next stage. So I just started packing, and being all sudden, doom and gloom situation, I started leaving the arena with the rest of the Mousesports team. The manager was looking at me and was like, "Hey, why are you so sad?" I'm like, I traveled all the way to Jonkoping, Sweden, and I didn't play my best and I'm out of the tournament. I'm just feeling really sad right now. And he's like, "What do you mean? You're still in the tournament. You advanced through the 2nd place." I didn't even check for the standings when I left. I was just sure that 1 and 2 is not enough for me to advance. But the group stage 2 ended up in this situation where I still advanced with the score of 1 win and 2 losses to the next stage of the tournament. So I was very happy to advance, and I wanted to make sure that the next day of the tournament I'll start with a fresh mindset. In group stage number 3, I got placed with Harstem, Nogrim and Bly, and with the fresh mindset I was able to smash that group with 3 wins and 0 losses, only losing a single map to Harstem. After topping group stage 3, it was time for the playoffs, and I wasn't happy with the bracket drawn. My side of the bracket had 2 of the strongest Koreans facing each other, Hero and Tasia, and I had to play versus the winner of them. It also had Nerchio, who had a very good record versus me, and it was a very hard matchup as a player to player. And it also had Stefano, who was the highest rated foreigner at that time, destroying everybody on its way and was the favorite to win the entire tournament. However, my round 1 opponent was definitely doable for me. I was facing Cytoplasm, who was a Swedish Zerg player, and I was confident I am able to win versus him. I remember in game number 1 versus him, I made a proxy pylon in his main base, and I worked in a bunch of sentries and bunch of zealots and completely surprised him. He wasn't prepared for this kind of attack, and I just eventually won the game. In game number 2, I won quite smoothly as well. With that win, I went into the quarterfinals to face the Korean player Hero. I remember it was a very close series, even though Hero was an overwhelming favorite versus me, and game 3 had an insane ending. It was a situation of 1 base Protoss versus 1 base Protoss, and I had him on the low ground. However, at that time, PvP was a lot about Colossus versus Colossus. If you didn't have a Colossus, you were basically behind. And in that situation, I was down to 0 Colossus versus 3 Colossus. And the only advantage I had was him going down the ramp to my entire concave. I remember how stressed I was in this situation because the fight was going quite my way. I think I was able to push him back a couple of times, but it was still not enough. He went down the ramp, I sniped his Colossus, and I was ready to snipe his observers, which was the main part of how I won this game. I sniped both of his observers, and I was ready to warp in some Dark Templars. DDTs come in, I blink forward, snipe the Colossus, and the last observer of the game gets sniped without Hero noticing it. And now I have Blink Stalkers and Dark Templars on top of his army, and there's nothing that Hero can do to defend. I remember being so happy to win this game. After I won the match 2-1, I remember going to the Hero's desk and he was completely devastated. I don't know if he was crying or something, but he was definitely very upset at himself. I remember him lying on the desk with his face covered by his arms and the Team Liquid members trying to console him. I tapped his shoulder, said good game, and I went into the semifinals. And right there, the friend Zerk Stefano was waiting for me. The entire tournament favorite, the best foreigner at that time. I was good friends with Stefano, so we just joked around before the games. And it was of course an uphill battle for me. I didn't win versus him in a tournament setting for a long time, so I wasn't expecting anything, so I was playing pretty much without any pressure whatsoever. All eyes of the StarCraft scene were on Stefano. Before we started the semifinals, we joked around together and we went to a restaurant to grab some food, just together as a bunch of friends, not as opponents or enemies. It was a funny experience just to talk with your opponent and share food right before your semifinal match. Obviously some mind games were included in the talks, but all in all it was a quite nice match. During that tournament, Protoss vs Zerg was in a very rough shape, but an Immortal All-In, or the Soul Train as you may know now, was emerging. It was one of the first events where the Immortal All-In was present. It was a 2-base timing with Immortal Sentries and just sending it forward, hoping for the best, and Protosses were doing it pretty much every game. It was predictable, but it was also very powerful, because Zergs were not used to this rush just yet on that tournament. I used this strategy twice versus Stefano, in game number 1 and game number 2, with a little bit of different variations to make sure that I'm not exactly predictable. To my surprise, I won both of these games, and I was just ecstatic to get to the grand finals yet again. The win versus Stefano was so funny to me, simply because during that food we shared before the semifinals, he said, "I know you're going to do Immortal and I'm just very good at it, I'll just defend it." And I said, "Will you? Will you defend it?" So that's why I was laughing at the end of that game. In the grand finals, I was going to face versus Dimaga, another great friend of mine from Brood War times, and an opponent from the grand finals of a previous tournament. And I was winning 2-0 versus Dimaga, and I lost 2-3 in the grand finals. So I wanted to get my revenge. We got around 1 hour to prepare for the grand finals, and together with the Mousesports team, we were trying to find a strategy that will work versus Dimaga. During that tournament, Dimaga beat the second best foreigner at that time, Naniwa, which was a big surprise to the entire community. Nobody expected that to happen, and for Dimaga to be in the grand finals there with me. He knew about the new Immortal All-In, and he brought his own strategy and own flavor to the matchup. Dimaga's playstyle was very popular in the tournament, and it was the talk of the tournament. He brought a Baneling drops and mass link style as the only Zerg in the world to play this to a very big success. Nobody played that playstyle, only him, and he was really good at it, so nobody knew how to deal with that. His previous opponent Naniwa thought he had the counter, but Dimaga still won. So together with my Mousesports friends, we're trying to find a strategy that will work versus that. One of my practice partners in Mousesports, Moro, came up with an idea that I should do in a grand finals. He said something like, "Why don't you go for like a charge lot Archon +1 timing? If he's playing only links and Bane links, you can hit a timing before he has a crucial amount of things, and maybe you can do this kind of timing and make it work." He gave me this suggestion and we went into the brainstorming of how exactly I should do it. Remember, I only had around 30 minutes or 40 minutes to prepare a strategy. So we did a lot of brainstorming and I thought I'm prepared for the grand finals. In game number 1, I wanted to go for this kind of timing and I was preparing, you know, I have the counter to the links and Bane links, but Dimaga very smartly didn't play how he did in the entire tournament. He switched up his gears immediately in game number 1, and the counter to my timing attack was roaches. And Dimaga didn't play roaches the entire tournament, and there he was in game number 1 of the grand finals, countering my timing push with the roaches. So I was very surprised that he played it so smart, but I somehow still managed to win game number 1 despite being countered with some great micro and decision making. Sprinkled in some Blinkstalker magic and I was able to get that game number 1 victory, and I was leading the grand finals. And in game number 2, I remember being able to defend a Baneling Blast from Dimaga, which I scouted barely with my sentries, and I was able to prepare mentally and properly force field the wall off. My wall off was consisting of one pylon, which was very breakable from Dimaga, and he noticed that. But I was able to do some great force fields, and I also remember doing one very smart thing in the defense of this Baneling Blast, as Dimaga is consistently trying to break through and I'm running out of force fields and my wall off has been broken. I destroy one of my gateways to reproduce a gateway, because the gateway that is building is going to have much more HP than the current one, which was at around 23 or 30 HP, so it would be much harder for Dimaga to break the wall off. So I destroyed the gateway and I built a new one, and Dimaga is unable to break through. After being so far behind, Dimaga still tried to catch me off guard while I was trying to take a third base, but I was aware of the situation, and again with some brilliant force fields I was able to defend myself and go for the counter-attack with some Zealots, and Archons and DreamHack just simply couldn't defend that, and I was up 2-0 into this grand final, and I'm one game away from winning the entire thing. In game number 3, we went for a very similar approach. We played a lot of macro, but DreamHack was just better. He consistently did some Baneling drops, crippled my economy, and eventually went for a big timing attack with Infestors, Broodlords, Lynx and Banelings, and completely destroyed me. Now, the score is still 2-1 in my favor into the grand finals, but I am starting to be very nervous. Like I mentioned before, I just played versus DreamHack in a grand finals of a previous big tournament in Finland, where I was leading 2-0 and I lost 2-3. And I'm really hoping that the history is not going to repeat itself. I'm here in the grand finals versus DreamHack again. I was leading 2-0 and the score is 2-1 right now. Am I going to lose next 2 games? I was very worried. So game number 4 approaches, and I was thinking that maybe this is the right time to bust out the prepared timing attack with Zealot, Archon and +1 that we had prepared for DreamHack before the grand finals. We are well into the series already, we both showed a lot of our strategies, and I was thinking this is going to be the map that DreamHack will try to do his style with Link, Bane and drops. So I was going to bust out my timing attack well prepared. I was very scared that this is not going to work, but the moment I saw that he has only Lynx and Banelings at the moment of my attack, I saw hope and light into the tunnel that I might actually be victorious here. The moment he put his drones away from the third base, I knew that I am in a good position. I consistently started to warp in additional units and I kept pressing forward. And the moment I saw he has no Overlord speed and he tries to go for Baneling drops and my army is surviving and there's no Lynx surrounding me, I knew I am one step closer to winning the entire tournament. I kept pushing forward as I didn't get surrounded. There were no more Banelings to be feared. And I keep pushing forward with Zealots, with Archons, with Sentries. And I know this is the moment. This is the moment where I'm going to be victorious. Where I finally get my first big victory in offline event. And I get myself a victory of 3 wins and 1 loss in the grand final. And I am the champion of DreamHack Summer. I was feeling so happy that moment because I've come to the grand final so many times. I had so many top 3 finishes, so many grand finals, so many 3-2s where I lost in the grand final, and I never made it to the championship. I never was the best player in the tournament. It was the very first time. I was extremely happy to finally close the grand finals against an opponent that actually I lost before, and after having such a difficult journey there. I had to beat Hero, I had to beat Stefano. I barely qualified to the next group stage, in group stage 2, remember? I was extremely happy for that to happen, and this is how I won DreamHack Summer.